The human body hides a secret that religions and science have forgotten. It is the true temple of God. Every organ, every cell carries a sacred code left by the ancients. What Manly P. Hall revealed about this can completely change the way you see yourself, the universe, and the people around you. The modern world has completely lost its connection to its divine nature. But what many ignore is that since the dawn of civilization, human beings have viewed their own bodies not merely as a collection of bones and tissues, but as a living temple, a sanctuary where cosmic truths echo in silence. Flesh, bones, organs. Each structure is a sacred cipher, a letter in a divine alphabet that composes the great book of the universe. This is not a new vision. It echoes on the walls of Egyptian temples, in Kabbalistic diagrams, in alchemical manuscripts, and, in a profound and elegant way, in the work of Manly Palmer Hall, The Occult Anatomy of Man. Manly Palmer Hall, a 33rd degree Freemason and a Rosicrucian, had a career spanning more than 70 years, wrote over 150 books, and delivered more than 8,000 lectures on esotericism, spirituality, Freemasonry, and secret societies. Hall died at age 89 under suspicious circumstances, and just like Nikola Tesla, much of his knowledge mysteriously disappeared after his death. We have many videos about his teachings here on the channel. No gatekeeping, so remember to check them out later. I'm sure you'll like them. I'm Gabriel Alexandre, and this is Esoterica Mind Portal, your gateway to ancestral knowledge. Every video here is a reminder of your soul's journey and the wisdom of our ancestors. If you're new, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss anything. We post new videos every Monday and Thursday at 7 p.m. You can help this message reach more people. Leave a like, share this video on social media, in groups, and with friends. And down in the comments, tell us what topic you'd like to see next. The most liked comment will get an exclusive video. Now, let's get back to the video. The book is a key, and like any hidden key, it only turns in the right lock. An awakened consciousness, open to mystery, yet disciplined by study and contemplation. Hall isn't simply describing physical structures or loose esoteric theories. He's proposing a reunion between body and spirit, between science and mysticism, between man and cosmos. In this work, the human body is revealed as the perfect microcosm, mirror and reflection of the divine macrocosm. But why study the human body in the light of the occult? Why not be content with Cartesian anatomy and traditional medical models? Because, according to Hall, the body is the oldest of temples, the first altar built by the spirit on the physical plane. Before churches, synagogues, mosques, or stone temples existed, there was already this living temple, shaped by arcane wisdom and animated by a spark of the universal mind. This is how he begins, with the premise that true anatomy is spiritual, and that the organs of the body have symbolic correspondences that reveal metaphysical truths. The brain, for example, is not just a biological processing center. It is the throne of the spirit, the receptacle of the divine spark, the holy of holies of occult physiology. The structure of the skull is compared to the three compartments of the tabernacle of Moses: the outer court, the holy place, and the holy of holies. This comparison is not accidental. For Hall, the ancients knew human anatomy in depth, and in representing temples with 3 chambers, were in fact encoding the map of the mind and of spiritual initiation. The neocortex represents the rational mind. The limbic system symbolizes the realm of emotions, and the deeper regions of the brain, such as the pineal gland, are associated with spiritual consciousness, or the all-seeing eye. This is the first great revelation of the text. The human head is a temple. And, like every temple, it has portals, altars, and veils that must be unveiled so the initiate can reach the sacred. The pineal gland, often referred to as the gateway to the spiritual, is the center of this entire dynamic. For Hall, it represents the connection to the higher plane, the missing link between man and his divine origin. The book then goes on to reveal that the spinal column is the sacred serpent, not merely a bony structure, but a channel for the ascent of spiritual energy, what the Hindus call Kundalini. The coiled serpent at the base of the spine, according to Hindu symbolism, must climb the vertebrae until it reaches the brain, illuminating the initiate and awakening dormant spiritual senses. Each vertebra represents a stage in the initiatory journey. Every nerve, every gland, every energetic intersection is part of a hidden map that leads the seeker back to the divine. Here, Hall begins to weave concepts from different traditions. The Egyptian serpent, Hermes' caduceus, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the rod of Asclepius, all meet in the human spine, showing that the ancients spoke a common language, the language of the body as symbol. It is no coincidence that the human spine has 33 vertebrae, the same number as the degrees of Freemasonry, the highest symbol of man's ascent toward enlightenment. Each vertebra is a rung on the secret ladder of consciousness, a stage in which the initiate conquers his shadows and draws closer to the inner light. In Kabbalah, this path reflects the ascent through the Sephirot, from the material base of Malkuth up to the divine crown of Kether, where spirit and matter reconcile. It is also the symbolic path of Christ, who ascends through the 33 years of his earthly life to Calvary, not as a historical event, but as an archetype of the soul's elevation. The serpentine energy rising vertebra by vertebra is the Christ force awakening within man. The number 33, therefore, is the seal of spiritual perfection. It marks the point where the human being ceases to be a creature and becomes a creator, uniting heaven and earth within, and revealing that true mastery is the awakened awareness of one's divine nature. And then he leads us to the heart, but not as the mere pump that propels blood. For Hall, the heart is the inner sun. It vibrates with the vital energy that animates all beings. In the Egyptian mysteries, the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. In mystical Christianity, the Sacred Heart of Jesus shines with divine light. For the alchemists, it is the furnace of transmutation. All this converges on the idea that the heart is the center of being, the throne of the inner Christ. The heart is the magician's eye, the place of synthesis between reason and intuition, between heaven and earth. Perhaps that's why, when you feel true love, something seems to expand in your chest, because your inner sun awakens for an instant. The liver, the spleen, the kidneys, all are discussed at both symbolic and physiological levels. Nothing is there by chance. The liver, for example, is seen as the purifier of the blood, but also as the hidden alchemist that transmutes emotional residues. The kidneys, associated with fear and will, are the inner judges, those who balance the psychic forces. The womb, in turn, is the cauldron of life. There, not only the physical body is gestated, but also thoughts, desires, and emotions. That is why many traditions locate the center of power, or hara, in the navel region. It is in this center that the ancient Chinese practiced the cultivation of energy, qi, and the Japanese the discipline of kai. But it is in the synthesis among these centers that Hall's work reaches its symbolic apex. The body is a tree of life, with roots in the instincts and a crown in the celestial heights of the spiritual mind. And between these extremes, there is a ladder, Jacob's ladder, the ladder of enlightenment, that must be climbed step by the sincere disciple. The spine is this ladder, and the brain the crown. So, are you enjoying this video? Remember to leave a like and comment below which topic you'd like to see in upcoming videos. The comment with the most likes will get an exclusive video. However, Hall does not deliver this as dogma. He invites, he prods, he plants the seeds of productive doubt. After all, why did so many cultures assign the same symbolisms to the same organs? Why is there so much agreement among alchemy, yoga, Kabbalah, and Hermeticism? When they speak of the body, is this a coincidence? Or is it proof that there is an ancestral, universal knowledge that survived camouflaged in symbols and myths? At this point, the text begins to delve into the mysteries of initiation. True initiation, Hall says, is internal. It takes place within the body's own structure. External rituals are only symbolic reflections of an invisible process in which the neophyte undergoes purifications, trials, and revelations within himself. Each stage of the initiatory process is lived in the body, in the mind, and in the spirit. And the body is the altar where the symbolic sacrifice takes place. You begin to realize that everything considered merely mystical or symbolic is in fact profoundly practical. When an alchemist speaks of the transmutation of lead into gold, he is also referring to the transmutation of instinct into intuition, of flesh into light, of man into God. And then the book begins to touch on an essential point. The body should not be denied, but understood. The true spiritual seeker does not reject the physical world. He understands it as the field where evolution occurs. Just as an architect does not reject scaffolding during construction, the initiate does not reject the body, for it is through the body that the soul manifests and evolves. And now perhaps you're asking yourself, if the body is a temple, who is the priest? If the mind is the altar, what is the offering? And if the heart is the sun, who lights that flame? These questions prepare us for the next stretch of the journey, where Hall unveils the deeper mysteries of occult anatomy, drawing parallels among the inner Christ, the ancient initiatory systems, and the subtle energy centers that shape our invisible existence. But that is something that will only be revealed if you continue. For as Hall himself said, true knowledge is not given. It is won by the one who dares, who knows, and who keeps silent. True initiation, therefore, does not occur in halls lit by candles or in secret words whispered under oath. It happens silently between the heartbeats and the pulses of the pineal gland. And it is at this point that Hall begins to reveal the role of the hidden Christ, not as a religious figure in the dogmatic sense, but as a universal archetype of the awakened soul, the higher self that descends into the world of matter to redeem ignorance through inner illumination. Just as the human body is a temple, the Christ is the hidden priest who dwells within it. But this is not the historical Jesus, bound to the chronology of first-century Palestine. It is the cosmic Christ, Christ consciousness, the Logos, manifesting in every human being who begins the journey of inner ascent. And what path does this Christ travel? It is the same one traced by the nervous system, the sacred way that connects the centers of perception, intuition, and consciousness. Hall then presents the nervous system as the true way of the cross. The siwai, nerves stretching from the spine to the brain, form a sacred cross, the cross of Calvary, where the personality must die so the spirit may rise. The central nervous system is, therefore, the instrument of crucifixion and also of illumination. The spine becomes the tree of life, the brain the Garden of Eden, and Calvary, the final stage of the initiatory journey, the symbolic death of the ego. But this crucifixion is not an end. It is a portal, for in surrendering to the inner Christ, the initiate awakens to the true purpose of existence, not to live only for the outer world, but for the eternal spirit that watches and silently guides from behind the masks of personality. The endocrine glands enter here as the hidden instruments of this spiritual journey. Hall pays special attention to the pineal gland, already mentioned, but also to the pituitary, the thymus, the adrenals, and others. Each gland secretes more than hormones. It secretes states of consciousness, vibrational doorways to other planes. They are like seals that must be opened in the book of Revelation, each releasing a part of the human being's dormant potential. The pineal gland is the eye of Shiva, the eye of Horus, the third eye that sees beyond illusion. For millennia, it has been represented in myths as a symbol of spiritual awakening. The ancient Egyptians placed it at the center of Osiris's forehead. Hindus speak of the Ajna chakra. Christian mystics associated it with the Star of Bethlehem, guiding the Magi to the birth of the inner Christ. The pituitary, on the other hand, is seen as the bride, of the pineal. Together, they form the alchemical marriage, the sacred androgyne that unites the masculine and feminine aspects of consciousness. When these two glands are activated in harmony, the Holy Spirit, symbolically represented as a dove, descends upon the initiate, bringing illumination, revelation, and spiritual ecstasy. This mystical marriage is what the alchemists called the conjunctio oppositorum, the union of opposites, the sun and the moon, the king and the queen, sulfur and mercury. All this is a symbolic language that finds its most sublime expression within the physical and energetic structure of the human body. Is this knowledge useful to you? Remember to leave a like and comment below with the phrase, "I'm enjoying the video," so I know you like the content and I'll make more videos like this. And as if that depth weren't enough, Hall also leads us to reflect on the Archmeinovon, role of the hidden forces that circulate in the organism, the etheric fluid, the astral light, the serpent fire. These forces are invisible to the physical eyes, but they can be perceived by the subtle senses that develop through spiritual discipline. Not by chance, many traditions speak of subtle bodies, the astral body, the etheric body, the mental body, all superimposed upon the physical body like layers of a cosmic onion, interconnected by currents of energy that flow in geometric patterns and sacred rhythms. At this point, the work reveals an even more unsettling truth. The universe is not outside, it is within. Every cell, every atom of the body is a reflection of galaxies, solar systems, constellations. The heart beats to the same rhythm as the stars. The brain emits frequencies that dance like planets in orbit. The human body is the hidden map of the cosmos, a living zodiac, a starry temple, and man, in his essence, is the priest of this inner universe. But why was all this concealed? Why isn't this knowledge taught openly? Hall answers with a subtlety only initiates understand. The secret has always been open, but few have eyes to see and ears to hear. Esoteric knowledge is not hidden, it is protected. Protected from ignorance, from the ego, from vulgarization. For in the wrong hands it becomes poison, but in pure hands it is the elixir of eternal life. This is the logic of symbolism. It conceals to preserve, but reveals to those who truly seek. That's why Hall insists that every symbol has multiple layers. An outer one for the eyes of the world, an inner one for the eyes of the soul, and a sacred one for the eyes of the spirit. The cross, for example, is not merely a Roman instrument of torture. It is the universal symbol of the union between heaven and earth, between time and eternity. The serpents of the caduceus are not just medical emblems. They are the Ida and Pingala energy currents climbing the spine until they meet the fusion point at the Ida Siom, crown chakra. The Grail is not a physical chalice, but the spiritual womb where the new human is born, regenerated by the fire of awakened consciousness. The cross is one of the world's oldest and most universal symbols, long before Christianity. In Egypt, it appears as the Ankh, the Ansate cross, representing the union of the masculine and feminine principles, the key to eternal life. Among the Babylonians and Chaldeans, it marked the meeting point between the sun and the cosmos, the axis of the world. For the ancient Druids, it was the emblem of the tree of life, the crossing of the visible and invisible worlds. For the mystery schools, the cross is the secret diagram of creation. The vertical axis symbolizes spirit descending into matter, and the horizontal axis, the soul expanding in earthly experience. At the point where these axes intersect, the inner Christ is born, the point of absolute balance, where the human becomes the mediator between above and below. Thus, for the initiate, to die on the cross is to transcend the ego, and to be reborn on it is to merge with the very solar principle of divine consciousness. And throughout his work, Hall is not merely describing this. He is whispering a summons, a silent call to those who sense, however faintly, that there is something more, that life is not just a cycle of birth and death, of consumption and repetition, but a deep mystery, a cosmic dance whose rhythm is inscribed in every beat of our heart. At this point in the book, the vision the author constructs is clear. The human being is not just a biological entity, but a spiritual one clothed in flesh. The body is the altar. The blood is the wine. The heart is the flame. And the mind, the veil that must be torn so the light can emerge. But there is more. Hall begins to show how the ancient mysteries were ritual forms of awakening these truths. Egyptian rites, Orphic mysteries, Pythagorean teachings, the degrees of esoteric Freemasonry, all used the body as an initiatory map. The initiate's symbolic death was the dive into the unconscious, into the inner worlds. Resurrection was the return to the surface with the flame lit. Everything, absolutely everything, in the ancient mysteries points to this occult anatomy. The Hierophant's staff, the veiled light at the beginning of the ritual, the ladder with 7 steps, the 4 elements on the altar, the ceremonial garments. Each of these elements corresponds to organs, systems, and states of consciousness within one's own being. It is at this point that we begin to realize studying occult anatomy is not an intellectual curiosity. It is a path, a system, a method of regenerating consciousness through the symbolic understanding of one's own body. And the more we understand this structure, the more we realize we were created in the image and likeness of something far greater, not in physical form, but in the archetypal pattern that connects man to the universe. But this awakening does not happen instantly. It demands inner silence, contemplation, study, and above all, purity of intention. Hidden knowledge reveals itself only to those who wish to use it for the elevation of the spirit, not for the satisfaction of the ego. At this stage of the journey, perhaps you are feeling something, a subtle recognition, as if certain words echoed ancient truths, as if something within you, which always knew, were now beginning to awaken. That is the spark of the mystery, and if it touched your heart, prepare yourself. For the next chapter will take us to the final revelation, the supreme integration of body, soul, and spirit, the birth of the true universal human, the alchemical mage, the Christic initiate who unites heaven and earth within himself. And then what remains for the human being who has recognized himself as temple, as a universe in miniature, as the alchemist of his own soul. What remains for the initiate who, passing through the veil of flesh, has understood that his anatomy is not a biological accident, but a sacred architecture built under the same principles that shaped the stars, the gods, and the eternal symbols. What remains is to live in coherence with this awakening, for knowledge, once obtained, cannot be undone. It pulses, it vibrates, it calls, and this call does not come from outside. It echoes from the center of being, the immortal spark, the hidden spirit that waits patiently for man to stop seeing himself as a fragment and begin to perceive himself as a totality. Manly P. Hall, through the final passages of his work, shows us that the supreme goal of occult anatomy is synthesis, the union of external knowledge and inner wisdom, of science and mysticism, of reason and intuition, because the divided human is weak, but the integrated human is divine. And the final integration happens when body, soul, and spirit are seen as different expressions of the same light. The body is the condensed shadow of the soul. The soul is the reflection of the spirit in the mirror of experience. And the spirit is the spark of the Logos, the word that in the beginning was with God and was God. It is here that Hall brings us to a point of no return. The understanding that spirituality is not an escape from the body, but a conscious penetration into its symbolic essence. The body ceases to be a prison and becomes the instrument of liberation. It is the lyre of the modern Orpheus, the vehicle of the music of the spheres, Noah's Ark that crosses the waters of the collective unconscious. The inner Christ, this universal archetype of the awakened spirit, does not arise in an external manger, but in the manger of the purified heart. And Calvary is not a physical hill, but the highest point of the mind, where the ego is crucified. and the higher self takes the throne. The cosmic Christ, in the secret language of occultism and Kabbalah, is the spiritual sun that dwells at the center of being, the living emanation of Tiferet, the luminous heart of the tree of life. He is not a character, but a universal force, the balancing principle between heaven and earth, between spirit and the incarnate soul. To awaken the inner Christ is to allow this solar light to pass through the shadows of the personality and restore lost harmony. It is the process in which the practitioner, through purification, meditation, and symbolic self-sacrifice, aligns his inner Sephirot and causes the divine spark to ascend from the base to the crown, uniting microcosm and macrocosm. When the cosmic Christ awakens in the heart, the human being ceases to be merely a creature and becomes a co-creator, a conscious ray emanated from the very Logos, radiating wisdom, compassion, and quiet power. But Hall also warns, this path is not easy. The modern world is the enemy of contemplation. Today's society glorifies the superficial, the material, the immediate. The temple has been profaned, the body reduced to an object of consumption or shame, science divorced from spirituality, religion captured by dogmas. And in this desolate scenario, humanity has forgotten who it is. That is why this work becomes so urgent, because it not only reveals, it remembers. It awakens ancestral memories, dormant archetypes, truths that were hidden under layers of conditioning. It touches the sacred point from which all traditions emanate, inner gnosis, the self-knowledge that frees, that heals, that transforms. The modern initiate, therefore, does not need to flee the world. He needs to transmute it from within. He needs to see in the body's organs the symbols of the gods. He needs to see in his breath the breath of spirit. He needs to see in his gestures the sacred ritual of creation, because everything is sacred when seen through the eyes of the spirit. And it is in this gaze that the final key of Hall's work resides. He doesn't want you to memorize symbols, dates, or systems. He wants you to see, to look at yourself, truly, to realize that the glory of the ancient mysteries still pulses in your blood, still vibrates in your cells, still burns in your spine like the serpent fire waiting to be awakened. You are the temple, you are the priest, you are the initiate, and everything you need is within you. But, and here is the last secret, this realization is not an endpoint. It is a starting point. For in recognizing the body as temple, responsibility is born. The responsibility to purify it, to honor it, to transform it into a living altar of spirit. The responsibility to become a bridge between worlds, between traditions, between eras, to be the one who carries the torch of hidden knowledge and, with it, lights the extinguished lamps of a humanity in darkness. Manly Hall teaches us that occult anatomy is not just a map, it is a prophecy, a veiled promise that man can indeed transcend his limited condition and become what he has always been in essence, a cosmic, eternal, creative being, not out of arrogance but out of alignment, with the divine order that vibrates in every atom, in every symbol, in every pulse of the universe. And then, at the end of this journey, the question is no longer, what is hidden in the body? The real question now is, what in me still refuses to see? Did you feel something deep in this video? Write "I am the temple" in the comments so I know this message touched you. For the knowledge has been given, the key has been handed over, the door has been opened. It's up to each one to cross through. If this content touched something inside you, if something resonated deep in your soul, know that this is not by chance. It is the echo of a truth that has always been there, waiting for you to remember. Now share this light, not out of vanity, but as a mission, because the world needs to remember what you just remembered. And maybe, just maybe, the next temple to be awakened will be the one standing beside you right now. So, did you like this video? Want a part 2? Comment below with the phrase, "I want a part 2 of this video," so I know you liked it and I'll make a part 2. If you made it this far, it means you liked our content, so remember to check out our profile. There are many videos you're going to enjoy. Every video on this channel was produced based on more than 20 years of study on these subjects. Leave a like below to support our work. Remember to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to get the next videos. I'm very grateful to have you here with me on this journey. Now click one of the videos on screen. I'm sure this video will make a difference in your life.